We are all here to celebrate a significant chapter in your lives. I am honored and delighted to be here to share this experience, to be part of this ritual that marks a transition in your lives from students to young adults. Many changes have occurred in your lives, both within personally and in the larger public realm of school and our society. Our society is undergoing a very fundamental battle, an economic crisis that is challenging the future of our continued democracy and many of our institutions. As all dynamic systems, stability and change occur simultaneously, but we're having more challenges than in many past decades. I could not stand here today and speak without acknowledging the economic challenge that Chester College is presently facing. Chester College is a gem that has impacted positively in the lives of many people. As a believer that there is always a way to solve a problem if enough people commit their time and energy, I am hopeful that this crisis will become a historical chapter that will be overcome. The goal of my talk is to give you very simple advice as an artist and a person. Before I begin, some of you were wondering what my history is, that I am both an artist and a physician. And Laura actually did mention some of those factors, so please forgive if I repeat some of that information. I will tell you briefly about my background as it relates to my art and overcoming obstacles. I will then go on to a few things that I hope will make you think about what it means to be an artist. I'm the oldest child of 5 siblings. My father is Cuban and my mother is Puerto Rican. I was born in New York City and raised in La Habana, Cuba, from 4 months to 5 years old by my Spaniard grandmother named Balbina, who was a spiritualist Catholic and took me to her healer regularly. It was here where I was influenced that I was destined to become a healer. My parents only had elementary school educations. We lived in Cuba and the United States off and on until I was 9 years old, as my father was a Cuban revolutionary, but that's another story. We left Cuba since the revolution was fought for democracy, and my father was not a communist. At age 10, living in the South Bronx, for Christmas, I received an oil painting set, which changed my life. A few tubes of paint and about 6 small panels allowed me to enter a world of my mind that before then I had not expressed. I attended the Bronx High School of Science, which at that time only had a mechanical drawing course and a music course. I loved biology as much as I loved art. Our teachers at Bronx Science were PhDs in their fields and were very passionate about their subject matter. I was hooked forever in the wonder of what I call the life force. During this time, my hero was Leonardo da Vinci, for he was simultaneously a scientist, inventor, and an artist. It was due to knowing about him that for me it became a solid belief that art and science were not separate things, but simultaneously coexistent. My father wanted me to go to college. My mother adamantly believed that I should only work as she had done. Both parents were very uncomfortable with American culture, and we had rip-roaring fights about my participation in it. We lived in the South Bronx, so they could only see what was immediately around them. At 16, after graduating high school, I left home to try and figure out what the world was about and what I was about. I was pretty lost, in a sense, being very American, yet also being Latina in 2 Spanish-speaking cultures. At 21, I moved to Berlin, Germany. I worked as a photographer in Berlin from 1972 through 1974, teaching the McNair and Andrews military personnel photography and occasionally doing assignments for a magazine called Berlin Today. I shot 6 rolls of black and white film a day, developing and printing them in my lab at work. I photographed all that was around me and used myself as a model, sometimes costume, in a performative role. I traveled to many museums in Germany, France, and Spain, painting and drawing in my apartment on Albrechtstrasse. I learned how to sew, crochet, and knit, intuitively making objects. Somewhere in that period, I decided to go to college. I chose one school, Boston University. Boston University had an art school and a medical school, and I wanted to study medicine and art. I became a biology major in the College of Liberal Arts and was able to take art history and art foundation elective courses. While I was an undergraduate student, I was very lucky to have a wonderful mentor by the name of Dr. Lynn Margulis. Dr. Margulis was an evolutionary biologist responsible for the symbiotic theory of evolution. Mother of 4 children, she changed my life in profound ways that she herself was not aware of. I eventually attended Boston University School of Medicine. During my years in medical school and residency, had limited time for art. I attended the Brandeis Graduate School of Arts and Sciences for a postdoc program in art. I was introduced into the prevailing theoretical art dogma of that time and read all that I could to understand the basis of critical theory, which was very popular and dominant. I attended School of the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, as it was very interdisciplinary, also as a postdoc. I worked to increase my understanding of art theory and to find out where my own work fit into the scheme of things in the contemporary art world. I found theory to be highly problematic. It was a painful process, but it made my own work stronger in many ways. I went on to attend Tufts University, SMFA Boston, as an MFA in studio art. My research in contemporary theory and the sociology of the art world increased my comprehension about art and the meaning of my own work. Ironically, it lessened my respect for critical theory itself, but it strengthened my understanding of my place in the art world. It made me aware of art as a sociological object. I learned that much of the art theorists were more interested in their political beliefs of the role of art and writing, and not as much as the art itself outside of their narrow treatises. I analyzed their semiotic texts that seemed to be more interested in creating a difficult to interpret, overly worded document with intentionally cloudy language than clear explanations of different ideas. I became very suspicious of semiotics as a language invention to create the illusion of art literary criticism when it was really dealing with political criticism of society. Society needs to be constantly evaluated if we are to keep our democracy. But imprisoning literary and other art production to serve a narrow political realm was a factor that I found problematic. I feel that art is about absolute freedom of expression. And though it may be about any type of politics, it should not be imprisoned by any one way of thinking.